I'm putting the trees in Rushmore tomorrow, but then Wednesday and Thursday is supposed to be rain. No, you didn't. Oh, maybe I won't let them cut down trees tomorrow then. What should we buy my meat?
Okay, 5 o'clock, folks. You don't have to, we have to call it to order.
Yeah.
Roll call. Do roll call.
Clark. David.
Here.
Fish.
Here.
Jorgensen.
Here.
Cole.
Here.
Parliament.
Okay. I have a motion to approve the agenda for the special meeting. Motion second to approve. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, interview for the mayor candidate. So I don't really recall how we did it before.
You can just kind of bring them up one at a time if you want. Yeah, however you want to do it, alphabetical or age or.
Good looks? Yeah. No, family.
I think alphabetical sounds fine to me.
Okay.
And I'm guessing you make a little statement, and then
Yep.
we can ask some questions if you like.
Correct.
Okay, TJ, come on up. You know the drill with the microphone.
I do, and it's already on. TJ Cameron, 2821 East Daybreak Circle in Brandon, South Dakota. Thank you, first of all, especially to the other two candidates and Brian for helping rearrange this since I was out of town last Thursday. I really appreciate it. To open, I'd just like to say, by now I hope it's evident to all of you about my commitment and intentions of serving this community are true, and I believe I have continued to pursue a seat on this council as long or longer than many people on the council have been seated. Other than Barb, of course, who's been our constant on the ever-changing council as of late. I'm here tonight confident that I have the right skill set for the position of mayor of Brandon and that I'm the right candidate to bring a new perspective as well as positive solutions and challenges to the challenges we're facing here as a growing community. While I have no doubt that Jack and Chuck are amazing representatives of our community, that I respect very much, by the way, I do believe that the soon-to-be appointed and next elected mayor will need to bring a unique skill set to our city leadership team. Both Jack and Chuck have had long and successful careers and tenure with very respectable employers that they retired from in the area. First National Bank and the Railroad are amazing companies and organizations. Both have been upstanding and long-term residents of Brandon with clear intentions of serving the community and positive contributions. While I would no way in question their intentions or integrity of the great residents, what I believe I bring to the table is a little bit different. I've not only had a successful career in mid to senior leadership roles, but somewhat different than Jack and Chuck. I know that Jack has some business experience, but my experience has included district, regional, and executive level positions with companies where my budget responsibilities far exceed that of our community. In fact, some roles have included a payroll budget alone that is equal to our city budget, as well as business ownership experience. I've owned multiple businesses over the years, some successful and one or two not so successful ventures. These ventures have granted me experience that one only gains by business ownership learnings, both failures and successes. It's one thing to work in a career that spends someone else's money, but it's an entirely different lesson learned when risking one's own money, and it brings a new perspective on what is best for others' money, like our taxpayers and community. Owning a business not only teaches financial lessons, but I've also learned how to look at problems and offer solutions from an entirely different lens. Recently, a unique and bold idea came from a prior business owner that serves on this board. While it was an idea that I did not agree with, it was an example of someone thinking of bold ideas to potentially solve our budgetary shortfalls and challenges that we were facing in the near term in our community. Should I be appointed to the mayor position and then elected, as is right by the residents, I would not only bring a different perspective on solutions to our growth challenges, but as a leader, I would also encourage the council and city staff to bring bold ideas forward rather than moving forward with the status quo. I've often been known as the quote-unquote fix-it guy in my professional experience, and I'm 100% confident that I would be a major positive contributor to creating a plan that would solve our short-term challenges and create a strategic roadmap to stay ahead of our similar challenges in the future. While you may have come to the meeting tonight with a candidate already in mind, I would challenge you to consider bringing me on instead, as someone that will challenge the way we think, represent our community with enthusiasm, and help create positive solutions that will ensure our long-term representation as one of the best communities to live in, raise a family, and start a business in, or even to retire in South Dakota or anywhere else. And I'm open to your questions.
Okay, so TJ, thank you. I have a question. You kind of mentioned earlier, you know, we're going through this whole CIP process, that we're trying to figure out our projects and what to do. And obviously we have a lot of needs, right? The community was neglected. We have a lot of infrastructure needs. So, but we also have some wants, like our parks. Do you have any out of the box ideas that you think that would be able to, or what would you do in that situation? Because we do have so much needs where every citizen utilizes infrastructure, right? Maybe not everyone goes to the parks or the golf course, but they're still much part of our community. So what kind of, are you open to out-of-box ideas or open thinking or?
Yeah, to answer the final part of that question, I think out of the box thinking might be one of the very first things that I could bring to the council. To answer the other part of the question, Vicki, as far as what kind of creative ideas I could bring, I think that I would like to sit down, especially as we plan, to understand the full picture. But I do think that now, more than ever, might be a time where this community may be forced to borrow. Today, it's going to be at a cheaper rate than ever in the future. I know we have large infrastructure needs, and the longer we wait, the more expensive each project becomes. The more expensive each project becomes, who knows what interest rates are going to continue to do in the future. I don't think we can borrow our way to success in the future, but I do think we might have a short-term need. As far as long-term creative ideas, some of the projects, such as the $9 million that was potentially proposed for our city administration building, as there's no doubt that it's in need. I think that there's some other creative ways. For instance, our police department, and I know I sent everybody here a letter, but our fire department has a state-of-the-art building. We own some land there. We could potentially build on, combine. What a better idea than having our first responders all in one place if we build on to accommodate the proper amount. Approaching developers and potentially leasing administrative building, I think would serve as a benefit for our community long-term and bridge the gap with the $9 million project that I don't think we can afford, but we desperately need right now. And it could be a really quick solution, as well as establishing really good relationships with our developers that I think also long-term will help solve some of our budgetary shortfalls as we continue to grow, with the permits as well as additional tax revenue. And if we balance that growth, I think it would make a huge difference.
TJ, what kind of cultural change, if any, would you like to see made within the city?
I'd recognize a couple of things that I've seen as of late. One of the things that I recently expressed my opinion about the way, the tax dollars are approached in large projects like that, but I also really commend the council for recently expressing some difference of opinion. I was used to coming to the meetings for a couple of years where almost every single vote seemed to go the exact same way. And what I didn't agree with was how the council was almost verbally reprimanded for having a difference in opinion. And in my opinion, that's what we definitely need here. So I really appreciated the difference in opinions and the creative ideas, even if they were ideas that I didn't necessarily agree with, that were recently presented. I think that that's really good. So I'd love to encourage that as part of the culture. I think another thing that's kind of evolved over the last, 5-6 years now, as we've gone through some changes, I think that the city has started to become more proactive and transparent with communication. We had a huge problem with negativity on Facebook on multiple different groups and sites and such. And I've seen many council members engage in a very positive way. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that encouraging a very positive response, and I really appreciate those of you that have said things appropriately. You don't have to, of course, acknowledge or argue in every single thing. We all have other things to do, but I'd love to see that transparent communication. As mayor, I'd even love to see like a weekly Facebook Live update to start to connect with some of our younger generation. And I know the city staff has started to put out things much more proactively, and I would like to be a part of that and continue to encourage it.
I'm curious on the, you mentioned bold ideas, and there was a hot topic a couple meetings ago, and there's kind of a hot topic on today's agenda, which is the city kind of following along. Where have you been on these hotter topics? Like, how would you have voted on the police topic, and then tonight we're going to be discussing very introductory stage, the golf course, and where are your thoughts on this?
So I think that my opinions personally versus what that I would need to represent in office have to differ greatly. You know, I have zero agenda of why I want to be up here other than serving my community. I live here, I've been here for 10 years, not near as long as, you know, some of the other applicants, but my kids are growing up here and I plan to make Brandon my long-term home. So my personal opinion, I don't necessarily think that the police department was the first place that we should explore ideas. However, I do commend Tim for bringing it forward as a bold idea. It was hot topic, it was very challenged. I met with a lot of negativity. Right time, right place, maybe not. But I agree with encouraging those types of conversations. But me personally, as the mayor, I wouldn't have voted unless I have to break a tie. But based on the conversations I had with a lot of people in my neighborhood and throughout the community, I would have been opposed to that change. Not opposed to bringing up ideas, but opposed to the change itself. As far as, you know, the upcoming topic, I think that our golf course has an opportunity to generate a lot more revenue for the community. I think as a business owner myself, I could contribute to ways that we could positively increase that, such as the utilization of our community center there, which I think is far underutilized and undermarketed. I've seen that for many, many years and thought of it for a long time, potentially leasing that area out to a nice restaurant. I mean, think of a steakhouse that oversaw the golf course. Thinking outside of the box as far as ways we could still own that property as a community and make sure it always remains reasonable fees-wise for our community, but also generates additional revenue, I think would be a huge, you know, something huge that would contribute. As far as the sale of it, if it's absolutely necessary, it may be possible, but we could also consider a lease versus selling that property so that the city would, you know, continue to have long-term control versus potentially selling it, as I know has been approached multiple times in the past as well. So hopefully that answers your question.
TJ, I have another question. So you kind of been talking about this too, but kind of a twofold. Your leadership as a mayor and your relationship with the council and how you feel the council. You brought up a little bit of there, but how do you foresee that going forward?
I think that it's no secret that I'm courageous enough to stand up at the podium, which I have a long time encouraged more residents to do. I don't think it's any secret that I'm opposed to sharing my opinion or opinion of those that I've heard in the community. I think it's very intimidating to stand here, and not because of the council, just because of any public speaking. You know, it's recorded, people watch it later, there's an audience. My relation with the council, you know, I've expressed my opinions, but there's in no way that I've ever had any disrespect for the council people here. I think that you do a job. I've been asked more times, why would I even want to be mayor, than what do I plan to do as mayor? And the reason is because I want to be part of the solution for the community, and I know that I have a skill set that would contribute to that in a positive way. My relationship with the council, I would encourage productive debate, which I don't want cookie cutter. Can we talk about things in advance? Can we come up with a plan? I think you encourage all that in advance, but I want this podium here to be less maybe intimidating. I'd love for the council to continue to have more productive debate, because I think that shows our residents and the people in your wards that you're bringing ideas forward that they're asking for. And I think that's a huge contribution to maybe in the past, the negativity. There was this perception that everything just went the same. And that probably wasn't the fact, but that was the perception by many that were out there. And I was really encouraged by the productive debate. I would encourage that more often with my council.
Sorry, one more question. So, if you are mayor, how do you plan on holding the city administration accountable? I'll give you an example.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so prior, we were told core project, all the phases, we had the money that we were able to do that and move forward as a council. And it wasn't until we read it in the media that we realized we didn't have the funds to do that. And so it would have been something that would have been nice to know ahead of time as council that, hey, heads up, I don't care that they spoke to the media, but just heads up, we don't have the money to go forward. We all had to read about it in the paper first. So if you were as mayor, that's just an example, how would you hold it accountable with that open communication and not have that us against them mentality? How would you make sure it's working as a team?
I definitely felt the friction. I mean, I think that anybody who was pretty active at the meetings sensed that in some recent topics. I think that the mayor has to play the perfect liaison between Brian, who's our city administrator, who may not report directly to the mayor anymore, which is fine. But I think that, you know, Brian has been an upstanding leader of this community and helped the growth over the last several years. But the mayor has to play a liaison. It's not, you know, the night shift versus the day shift. It's here's the things that the community is expressing, and here's the things that our city staff can handle. I mean, I think that's the two ways that those positions could come together. The mayor represents, this is what is being said within our community, this is what our representatives are asking for. Brian brings forward what's realistic, here's what my staff can handle, here's some suggestions, and we sit down, we talk about those things together, potentially look at agendas and how can we get those on. Some things may have to be discussed within executive sessions, you know, that are confidential, but I think that mayor has to play the perfect liaison between the city staff and the city administration to represent their best needs and the council who represents our community's desires.
TJ, I wasn't aware that you had moved over to H&R Block as an employer. Like, how does the timing work for you? Just candid question, you know, Mayor Lundberg resigning because of the time commitment was the reason stated. So I guess I would just ask how you're going to juggle. I don't know what your role is or how much you're out of town or any of that, but help us understand what that.
I can. I've been very transparent with my employer. In the past couple of times that I have sought to be on this council, I have also been transparent with my employer. Matter of fact, about 15 minutes before this meeting, my boss said that there was a mandatory meeting, and I said, I'm sorry, I can't attend. I have an obligation that was already rescheduled on my behalf to be able to contribute here, and I was told I have to be there. And I said, I'm really sorry, I can't. It's a commitment to my community that I have and that I want to continue to have. And she understood and wants to talk to me later, which is totally fine. Not me personally, but to update me on our meeting that was going to happen at very short notice at 5 o'clock. So although I have to be committed to my family and my job and the way that I provide for my family, I have been very clear that my commitment is going to be to the time needed to make sure that I can contribute to the city in a positive fashion. Beyond that, I've also been transparent with my employer. I'm considering a local business purchase, which the subject matter has to stay confidential for now, but we have a signed purchase agreement and it would allow me a lot of flexibility to be even more involved. Now, whether or not we close, that still to be determined, but either way, I've been very clear and transparent about the time committed that would be needed to be committed to this role. And I travel significantly less. I happened to travel last week for the first time in 9 months, other than just driving to Sioux City and back. But that was my first airfare travel in nearly 9 months, and that's just going to North Dakota.
I can vote for that.
Thank you.
Check with the security did that.
Right.
Thanks, TJ. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got a couple more. So, TJ, are there any topics that could cause bias or conflicts of interest for you? If so, what might those be, so we could be aware that there might be an issue with the tie-breaking vote?
I think if there was a potential conflict of interest, I'd have to recuse myself, you know, if there was a financial interest. But, you know, I think that one thing that's no secret, maybe the elephant in the room, is that I own a fireworks store, right? And recently it was a very hot topic. However, I'd like to point out the fact that I worked with Barb to potentially come up with a compromise ordinance that was actually more strict than what the residents approved in the vote, because I thought it was reasonable. Now, should that subject come up again? You know what? I said I don't think we should legalize everything. I think we should find a even ground, and that's what I put forward. If I were the mayor, though, I would completely have to recuse myself from that type of discussion, because other than the perceived agenda that somebody might have, there's no other reason I want to serve here other than to make sure that our community remains successful, and this is the best place to live in South Dakota or anywhere else in the nation for my kids to grow up here.
Real quick, there's two more, and then I'll so if you don't get the mayor's spot, are you going to continue to try for future council seats or the mayoral appointment in the spring?
Yes, I've been asked that question multiple times in the past, and I've continued to prove my commitment to being here on the council over the last several years. You know, I was asked that exact same question when there was an election. I did have to withdraw from the mayor election last time because I was in the hospital for 10 days, which ended up not being a long-term health concern, but in full transparency, I was in the hospital for 10 days during the peak time that we would have had to campaign. Besides the fact that I actually thought Mr. Lundberg would be a fantastic mayor, but I had to withdraw for personal reason. Otherwise, I would have been involved in that election as well. But I also thought there was another gentleman that was committed to the process as much as I would be, and unfortunately, that didn't work out.
And my last question, you've probably been assessing this decision as much as we have in the last few weeks. I'm curious about what hesitations from your viewpoint might there be about either of the other two candidates?
As far as candidates, as I think I stated pretty clearly, I respect Jack and Chuck a great deal. A matter of fact, I've ran against both of them, and I think it could be argued that, well, either candidate has beat me in the past election. But I have remained, just a fact. But I remember when I ran against Chuck, I said, man, there's nobody else in the community that I could possibly have ran against and lost that I would feel bad about losing to other than Chuck. And guess what? That happened. Then I thought, when I run this time, no possible way I could compete with somebody who's been here 30 years before, contributed to the community, had their kids grow up here, and then Jack surfaced as a candidate. So I can't take anything away from either candidate. The only thing I can say is I really truly believe that I bring a unique perspective in a way that I would challenge our thinking to come up with solutions, as I've been known for in my past, so not just a promise, but in my entire professional career, I'm kind of known as the fix-it guy. How do you think outside of the box? How do you keep coming up with ideas, such as Tim came, popular or not popular, such as Tim came up with for discussion. Dana, you came up with a discussion not too long back regarding insurance, and it's not been popular, but it's at very least debate that is productive for the community, and I would continue to encourage that. So can't take anything away from them. I just think I'd bring a different way of approaching things.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, so just to clarify, this is an appointment term for 1 year. There will be an election, not an appointment at the next.
Oh, did I say what?
Yeah, it's election. Just to make sure we're clear, Mike, right on that?
Yep.
There'll be an
Next
election.
April, there will be an election for a 1-year term.
Yeah, okay, there'll be an election.
And then 4 years after that.
Right.
Correct.
Thanks, TJ.
Thank you.
All right, are you next in the alphabetical order? It's a Monday, I'm not really sure. Okay, got it.
Very close.
We probably would have stood in line at the graduation. That's the reason, probably. Okay, I'm Jack Parliament, as most of you are well aware. I live at 521 East Lakeview here in Brandon. Been a member of the community for over 40 years. My kids grew up in the school district. I've always lived in the district. I took office last year in July, and I truly have enjoyed my time on the council. We have and will continue to address some important topics for our community and our great community, I'd like to say, of Brandon. I think most of you know by now that I'm an independent thinker, and we dealt with some issues that have divided us and other issues that have united us. However, I think you will all agree that we've always been able to move on from any contentious conversations and or votes. And let's continue to always do that. I think that's important, and as a leader, I will strive to get that done each and every day. As mayor, I will be a conciliatory leader. When we have tough decisions to make, it's important to listen to all viewpoints. That's why you'll see me as one of the last to comment in many of our discussions. However, I'm not afraid to bring up controversial topics to the council if I feel that it's in the best interest of the constituents that we serve, i.e. the mask mandate. As mayor, I will listen to all viewpoints and, if needed, work with differing opinions to come to an equitable solution. I learned long ago in business, and I think it applies here, that when neither party is 100% satisfied with a solution or a deal, that is probably or likely a good deal. I've seen that in business over and over. All parties aren't always agreeable or 100% satisfied, but if you can work together to get a solution, it's really a good outcome. We have several tough decisions to make over the next few weeks and months concerning the CIP. Individually, we all have our own opinions as to which projects we need to fund. However, we recognize that we cannot accomplish funding every project on the CIP list. All of us are looking for answers, and we're all thinking out of the box, and I guess that's the phrase of the night here, to come up with some solutions. Sometimes these ideas are not popular, and we recognize that, but however, I do believe that having these conversations will ultimately get us to a point where we can all agree on a finalized capital improvement plan for the city of Brandon, for the future of Brandon. And I look forward to leading that discussion. I'd like to just address another topic here. You all received an email from a constituent asking you to vote for another candidate because they wanted me to stay on as a voting member of the council. I felt as though I was receiving a vote of confidence, and I also heard that same comment from a member of the community. Now, I did reply to the email saying, quote, "Although I appreciate your confidence, I feel that applying for the mayoral position is an opportunity to continue to be an advocate for the citizens of Brandon. And if selected to serve as Brandon's next mayor, I'll continue to be a voice of reason. I am optimistic, truly optimistic, that a qualified candidate is available and will emerge to fulfill my alderman position in Ward 3. And now another issue is potentially out there concerning me, and that's the interest or the potential for a conflict of interest in my application for the position of mayor due to the monetary benefit of $3,500 a year. Now, if I were choosing this as a profession for $3,500 a year, I'd be making the wrong decision. Truly made the wrong choice. The conflict of interest that our attorney noted in her email to council earlier today referenced two situations that she was trying to use as precedent. And quite frankly, I'm not making the connection here. She referenced two situations where sitting councilors had a conflict. Circumstances noted were a conflict not due to the receipt of a $50 gift card. It was rather for the potential of undue influence. This has nothing to do with undue influence or a conflict. Now, as I understand the law from serving on the South Dakota Department of Transportation's Railroad Board for 10 years, members must disclose if they believe they have a conflict of interest. You disclose it. If you're a member, you disclose it, that you might have a conflict. Then, and only then, do the other members vote whether to accept your conflict, and then that person is recused from a vote. Now, if you as counselors truly feel that I have a conflict of interest because I applied for the mayor's job for $3,500 a year, tell you what, I'll gladly donate that $3,500 to a local charity, and the conflict is done. So I truly feel that it's up to the council to decide this issue of whether you feel that I actually have a potential for a conflict of interest, or do I have one. So with that, I will take your questions.
Same, most of them are the same.
Okay.
What kind of cultural change would you like to see?
Well, I think as much as I love Mayor Lundberg, there was times that he was upset with us for not being able to work together and come together to a more conciliatory vote. I think the mayor needs to be able to work together with the council and, maybe be able to take opposing views and meld them together, somewhat the way Dave and I happened to work together to try to come up with a solution on the mask mandate. That was a way to, we saw a need for it, and we were just trying to get all parties together somewhere in the middle to make it work. It didn't work out, and I have no hard feelings about it. But that's the type of leader that I think we need, and that's maybe a little bit of a shift from what we've had in the past. At times, there's always some tension between the council and the city administration. As mayor, I truly feel that that's part of his job, his or her job, to bridge that gap, per se, between the council and the staff.
Yep, so same question with the time commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about your ability to juggle this position.
Well, a little over a year ago, when I decided to make a run at the council, I knew that I had the time. I had retired in the last year, and it's something that I had always wanted to do. I just never really had the time to make a true commitment to it. And now, with myself being retired, I have a part-time consulting business, but that doesn't take much time out of my day at all. And since COVID, it hasn't been, I really haven't been working it at all. So I see absolutely no issue with time commitments for the job. And I'm actually looking forward to being able to spend a little extra time if needed.
And are there any topics that would serve to provide you with a bias or be a conflict of interest where you would not have the ability to rely on you for a tiebreaking vote?
No, my former employers don't have any business directly here in Brandon or in the area. There's another railroad, but that has nothing to do with my former position. So honestly, I really can't come up with anything. When I served on that South Dakota Railroad Board, there was numerous times that I had to disclose that I had a potential conflict with the railroad that I work for, and never was worried that I was going to be voting for something that was going to benefit either myself or the company that I work for. And so I recused myself from those discussions if and when they ever came up. So I don't anticipate it, but if it ever does, of course I would recuse myself, or ask to be recused properly.
And then earlier we asked TJ about the hot topics. Obviously, we were able to hear your thoughts on the topic around the police. How about the golf course? And
Mm-hmm.
seeing the agenda request form, what thoughts are swimming
Yep.
around in your head on that?
Well, as I said in my prepared remarks, we're all trying to think outside of the box. Tim brought his forward. Danny, you brought this forward. I brought one forward. It's got on our agenda later about a bond, possible discussion at least about a bond issue. As publicly noted, I was against contracting with Minnehaha County on the Sheriff's Department. I appreciated the fact that we were listening to the potential on it. Same with the golf course. Personally, unless I hear some other arguments or something is presented, at this point, I would probably be against selling the course. I'd have to be convinced otherwise pretty heartily to change that vote at this point in time.
Question that though, how about just the discussion having it? For, there's sometimes there are those controversial topics. And like, you're right, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, but I mean, is there an upset that we're just even having the discussion, or what's your philosophy of that?
No, absolutely not. I think, as I mentioned here in my statement even, that we're all thinking outside of the box, and if we're trying to come up with new ideas, some of them aren't going to be popular, but if someone brings one thing up, and it might spark an idea in any one of us that, you know what, maybe that's not going to work, but maybe some other idea may work. So I think it's good to have those conversations, and I'm hoping and quite sure that we will come to some sort of a solution for all of the CIP projects. We all may have to give and take on our personal preferences, but I think it's still good conversations to have, and I look forward to lead us down the path that we're all looking to get to.
My last question, seeing as I asked TJ, you've probably been assessing as much as we have, maybe even more so. So I'm curious as to what's maybe going through your mind on any hesitations there may be about the other two applicants.
I have zero reservations about either candidate, quite frankly. I think they both bring a unique set of skills. Chuck has been in the community and has served the community for many, many years. It's well known TJ's desires to do the same, and I think we all bring some unique skill sets to the position. And but personally, do I have any dirt to spread? Absolutely not. Nope. I think they're both great candidates, and if I'm selected as the mayor, they're both from my ward, and I think they would both be great replacements for me as well.
Any other questions? Mayor? Yeah?
Yep. Thank you.
Afternoon, everybody. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Chuck Parsons, live at 600 North Yellowstone. Lived in Brandon 32 years. Prior to that, I've been in banking for 45 years. Worked in community banks, so worked closely with communities and organizations, and I've been retired for the last 3 years. So, also as noted on my application, I've been involved with the Planning and Zoning Board since, I'm going to say, the mid-90s. There was a brief stint I got off, and then Tim then took my place as chair. And then I've been on the revolving loan fund for that length of time. I've been with the Development Foundation for that length of time. And this year I'll finish up my position as past chair on the chamber. I think what I could possibly bring to the mayor position is a historical perspective. As my 32 years when I worked at the bank, I was the officer that worked with the city. So I worked very closely with Dennis and Brian on various city issues at the time. Dennis more to do with bonding and that type of financing. When the bank was in that type of financing, it's kind of gotten away from that. So I didn't work as much with Brian on that, but working with both of them and working through planning and zoning, and then just being involved in the community hearing the way council people would talk about staff. I have a historical perspective about that. And I was approached by several people to run for this position. I felt very flattered that they thought of me like that. The more I thought about it, I thought that I could bring that historical perspective in being involved in Brandon, and I would welcome that opportunity to be the mayor. So I'll stop there and answer questions.
I have the same ones. What kind of cultural change, if any, would you like to see made?
This probably goes back years, and I think it's relevant now. I would like to see what I would call a adversarial relationship between the council and staff stop. I've seen it in the past, and I've seen it from my time on council, and I think there's a little bit of that going on now. I think it should stop.
What would you do to implement that change?
Well, I think as Jack indicated, TJ did too, be that go-between. I mean, I think that's where, I think being in banking, you get in between your customer and you get in between your regulatory authority, and you have to meld those two together. So I think as mayor, you'd have to do the same thing, because the city has certain codes, laws that you have to follow, who the public may not understand. Maybe sometimes the council wouldn't understand it. So I think that position would have to be a go-between in that.
Obviously, we have a long CIP list, right? And so you have a financial background. We have a lot of needs, but there also, we know too, there's wants, and we have to balance that accordingly, right? Like, everyone uses the infrastructure needs, but the parks, the golf course, that's something that is a big want, and it kind of makes Brandon Brandon. So, with your financial, expertise and your experience, is there any ideas that you would have, or how we would move forward or try to do that good balancing act?
Well, I think Jack made mention of it. I think everybody has to be willing to compromise, Vicki. And I think, I don't know for sure, but maybe there's an opportunity on the income side of things that nobody's thought about. I don't know what that could be yet, but I think everybody's focusing so much on expenses. I think we have to be careful of, in my time here in Brandon, I have an expectation of what I want the city to provide. And if you start cutting expenses and take those things away, I'm not going to be real happy, because then the perception is not good. So I think compromising, I don't know what it would be yet. I think there may be some opportunities on the income side. So you don't have to keep attacking the expense side of things. I guess that's one thing that I did learn in my banking career and dealing with various businesses. A lot of times there's only so much you can do on the expense side or the overhead side. They are just what they are. You have to attack things more on the income side.
So I've heard some community interest around a potential council seat vacancy. If Jack's seat were to open up, all three of you were in the same board. I asked TJ this as well. Would you be applying for that and or the mayoral election in the spring?
Possibly to both.
And Chuck, do you have any topics that would be presenting as topics that would be maybe biased about or conflicts of interest, where we have an issue obtaining a tie-breaking vote?
Can't think of what it'd be unless you all think is me being the chair of the Development Foundation is a conflict. I'm done with the chamber at the end of this year. My plans are, I've expressed this to Brian, I'm going to be done being the chair of the Development Foundation as soon as the city is ready to hire somebody full-time to take over from Dennis. I think the Development Foundation needs to transition into more youth. There's a lot of us that have been on there a long time, and we need to step back and step away and let some other people get involved.
Chuck, you mentioned the income side. Can you expand on that a little bit? What Are you talking about income as far as taxes, or are you talking about income as far as expansion of,
Well, I think it
Money
could
coming
be two things, Dave. I mean, as we continue to grow and build more houses, that's going to bring in more of a tax base. I don't know enough about the topic if there's something we could do with taxes, like real estate taxes. So I don't know the answer to that.
Chuck, and item I put on the agenda for tonight deals with the golf course and discussing just entry-level discussion on potential sale of the investment entity. Where are your thoughts on that discussion?
I think it goes back to what I said before, Dan. I think we're focusing too much on the expense side of cutting services, doing away with the police department. I don't think that's the way to attack things right now. And maybe you could slow down some of the projects' timelines that we're doing. I think that should be discussed. Maybe it has. I haven't been aware of that, but I think maybe that could be something too.
Other questions? Same one, you've probably been assessing this decision at length. Do you have any hesitations about either other candidate that we should know about from your perspective?
Nope.
Time, I didn't ask about time. You've got a heavy-duty employer here in your application, Chuck.
Yeah, my wife and my puppies.
Yeah. You have time?
And I can reschedule my golf rounds, so.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Okay, thank you all.
Thanks all for your interest. Generally, we have no interest, so that's terrific. Okay, we got a few minutes before the council meeting starts.
Can I make an emotion?
Oh, and what?
We don't do it until the meeting.
Oh, are you trying to impose it? Wait, I said we can't say that. Are we adjourning? Yeah. Is everybody adjourned? All in favor?
Oh, I just said something else to adjourn.
We have to talk about.
Kiwi's coming out. Kiwi's coming second round, I know. Is there really real?
Was that a headline then?
I suppose there are some people walking around in New York City
Probably are.
Okay.
Is that what they do?